Hello everyone, I'm a tutor with UPlads and today we are going to talk about few more string functions. In our previous lecture, we have covered almost the most useful ones that you would require in your day-to-day life, probably when you are setting up or implementing a new database. Today we will talk about few more string functions that might be useful to you but might not be used at that frequency as we have as the ones that we have previously discussed. So to start with, we have the first function, that is the repeat function. Let me write down the query for you. So we have this repeat function. What does this repeat function do? This function repeats a string as many times as specified. So if I write something like this, let's say uplads, and I want it to be repeated thrice maybe. So you can see that uplads got repeated thrice. Let me add space to it to be more visible. As you can see, uplads got repeated thrice. Now what if I specify 0 here? What happens is nothing will be repeated as I have passed a 0 parameter here. So that was a repeat function. Moving to the next. This one is the most helpful one when you want to replace something, and especially when you want to update one column. Let's say I have, we can demonstrate this. What does this replace function do is, this replaces all occurrences of a substring within a string with a new string. Okay, so what it will do is, it will first of all find that substring that you want to replace in a given string, and that substring it will replace with a new substring. Okay, now let me demonstrate it to you. Let's say I have something like this. I am using replace function, then I have uplads dot uplads SQL maybe. Now I want to replace SQL with SQL is the best. So what it will do here is, it will first of all go and find SQL. This is a substring in the original string, which is uplat SQL. It found that there is one occurrence here. Now it will replace it with my third argument. My third argument is the substring which with I want to replace. Okay. So when I execute this, I get something like this. Uplat SQL, SQL has been replaced to SQL is the best. Let me take off SQL from my third argument to be very clear. Now what it will do is, it will completely remove SQL and give me the new text. So when I run this, uplads is the best. So that is what you get when you use the replace function. And generally, if you want to update the entire string, you can also do that. Let's say I have written something like this, uplat SQL, and okay, uplads, and then I'm saying replace that entire text with this. So as you can see, uplat SQL was my original text. It replaced the entire text with a new text, that is uplads is the best. So that's what replace function does. Moving on to our next function, that is reverse function. Now this is very interesting, and reverse function will you might feel that reverse function does not work in terms of palindrome. I'll tell you what is a palindrome and we can work on it. For now, what reverse function does is, it reverses a string and it returns the result. So let's say if I'm passing something like this, LQS Z T L P U. Okay. Now if I reverse this string, I get uplads SQL. So that is what it does. It takes the entire text and it reads from right to left and returns that text to me. Okay. Now why I did said that it does not work with a palindrome function. So for palindrome, we can, let me first of all tell you what is a palindrome function. So if there is one word, if it is read from left to right, or if we read it from right to left, it remains the same. Okay, so we can use numbers here if we want. Let's say 1 2 5 2 1. Okay, now this is a palindrome text When I do reverse, the same text will be printed. Ideally, reverse has done its function. It has read this text, which is from left to right. The result is obtained from right to left. But we obtained the same result. That is because it was a palindrome text. That means if you read it from left to right or right to left, the content does not change. So that is what is palindrome. But reverse has uh, actually reverse function has worked here. It is just that because of the text format, we are not able to see how the working has been done. But there has been a working done in the backend. There are several C programs written in there are some functions and programs written in C language. That is actually the backend of any database. So whenever you are thinking that reverse function is an inbuilt function, yes, it is an inbuilt function, but it has a particular function defined for it. It has been programmed behind the database, and it is programmed in C language. If possible, I'll walk you through that as well. I'll show you that how exactly it looks when you are dealing with the backend functions or the C functions that has been written to create this inbuilt MySQL function. So that was guys reverse function for you. Now moving on to next is the space function. This is very easy to deal with. If you don't want to manually count the number of spaces you want to specify in your string, you can use space function. What it does is it returns a string of the specified number of space characters. Let me demonstrate it to you. Select space. If I say 10, you will not see anything in the output because we are just adding some spaces to it. We have added 10 spaces to it. Okay. Now, if I take the char length of it, you will understand what I'm talking about. Okay, sorry. Select. If I take the char length of space 10, you will understand that there are 10 spaces added to my text, to my output. Okay, but in output you did not see anything. That is because it is merely a space and nothing else. Let us try to understand this with concat function. Okay, now I have concat function. Let's say I write something like this, you lads, then I don't give any space here. So my text is SQL. Okay, something like this. Okay, and now what I do is I go and add some spaces to it. Let's say 10 spaces. Okay, now you can see the difference in output. You can all see here that spaces are added, but how do we make sure that 10 spaces were added? So for that, what we will do is we'll simply go and find out the char length. So when I find out the char length, here the char length of uplads and SQL concatenated is 9. If I introduce my space function here, then my output should be 19 because originally it was 9 characters. I added 10 more spaces to it. That means I have added 10 characters to it. So it becomes 19. So I should get 19 as my output. So that's how the space function works. Now next is the comparison. Now we talked about strings, we talked so much about dealing with their spaces, with reversing the functions and many other string capabilities. Now we will switch to comparing a string value. So the string comparison, it is denoted by strcmp, string compare. This function simply compares two strings, sorry. Now, there are three things you need to remember with respect to the output of strcmp. If both my strings are equal, this function will return 0. If my string 1 is less than string 2, this function returns -1. If my string 1 is greater than string 2, this function will return 1. Okay, let us try to demonstrate this and understand. So when I pass two equal strings to my function, what I get is 0. And if you remember, I just said that if my output is 0, that means both the string are equal. Both of them have matched. Okay. Now, what do I mean by, let us try to get the output for other two results as well, where let's say I'm comparing SQL with uplats. Okay. I got -1, which says that string 1 is less than string 2. Okay. Now, we will understand that how it is less than uh, the string 2. It is not just the number of characters. That's not how it is calculated. So let us try to first get the third result. I'll simply say uplats first and then I say SQL. Okay. My output is 1. Okay. So now we have demonstrated that if my both the strings are equal, my output will be 0. If my first string is less than second string, then it is -1. If my first string is greater than second string, then it is 1. Okay. Now, how do we find if it is greater or smaller? So for that, let me give you one example which will help you understand. If I pass just one character here, okay. Initially, you might have thought that SQL is just 3 characters and uplats is 5 characters, and that is the reason we got -1. But that is not how actually it is being designed. So when I pass A and B to my string compare, so my character length is equal now. So how do we demonstrate? Here my output is -1, which says that my string 1 is less than string B, string 2. Okay, that means this is alphabetically sorted and it has a corresponding ASCII code assigned to it, which is being compared in the backend or in the C function. Okay, let's say value for A on conversion is 1 and value for B on conversion is 2. And that is the reason 1 is less than 2. So the numbers behind these characters are compared, and that's how we deduce that what my output should be, whether it should be 1 or it should be -1. Okay, so it is sorted alphabetically and then it is decided. If I simply reverse this, now my string 1 is greater than string 2. Okay, because the ASCII code or the value for B is greater, the numeric value for B is greater than the numeric value of string 2. And that is why if you see now, I get the output 1, which suggests that string 1 is greater than string 2, which is true in our case. So that was about strcmp. It is based on sort order. Now here we complete the string functions. And now to just give a start on numeric functions, we are going to deal with a lot of numbers from now on. We have covered all the string functions till now. You can again go back and watch the previous videos to revise all your functions and to remember the nodes and null handling techniques which I had already shared with you. Now we will move on to few numeric functions. I'll just give you an introduction of how do we deal with numbers. We have learned to deal with strings. Now we will learn to deal with numbers. Okay. So the first most function that I will discuss with you is the absolute function. This is denoted by ABS. Okay. What does this absolute function do? This returns the absolute value, that is the positive value of a number. Okay, let me demonstrate it to you. If I pass something like this, minus 25.75, okay, what my absolute value will do is it will return me the positive value of the given number, which is 25.75. Okay, also, not sure if you noticed or not, whenever I am writing string values, I am using double quotes. But whenever I am writing numbers, I have simply passed those numbers in the functions. Why so? That is because the database can then bifurcate that if the quotes are mentioned, that means it is a string, it is a variable, it is a text which needs to be processed. If you are passing some negative values, then it might not understand that what is to be done. In our case here, since it is not, we are not specifying any data type here, it will simply go and do the appropriate functioning whatever was designed. But had this minus 25.75 been an integer value in our database, had this been a data type integer in our database, and you are passing quotation to it, then it will not understand. Let's say I have a column age, and if I go and write something like this, okay, it will not understand what does that age is, and it will simply return 0, because it does not find, it cannot find the absolute value of a character. It can find the absolute value of a number, and that is why it will return 0. So make sure that when you are dealing with tables and databases, you are thorough with the data types that you are using and the functions that you are trying to implement on them. So that was absolute function for you. Now, what if I pass a positive value to it? It should return me the positive value only. So it will make no change to me. If basically what it is doing is, if there is a negative input, it will convert it to positive and give it to me. If there is a positive input, it will not do anything. It will simply return the same value to me. Okay. That was absolute function for you. Next, we will move to the ceiling function. Okay, ceil or ceiling, whatever you prefer to call. It is written this way. Sorry, I have made a spelling mistake. It is SCEIL. Now what does this do is, this function returns the smallest integer value that is bigger than or equal to a number. Okay. Now what does that mean? Let us demonstrate. Demonstration is always easy to understand. If I do something like this, 23.1, if I find the ceiling value, okay, now ceiling means the upper boundary. Okay, so I'll get the value 24. Okay, now for this input 23.1, my lower boundary was 23. Then there was this value 23.1, and I had a upper boundary 24. When I give the ceiling function to my query, what it will do is, it will simply go and find the upper boundary of this function, which is the next immediate bigger number, which is 24 in our case. Okay, if I give 7 or anything here, it will simply go and find the upper boundary. So to reiterate the definition that I said, it will return the smallest integer value that is bigger than or equal to a number. So it will find the smallest upper boundary. Okay. So let me write down that again, 23.1 and then 24. So it will give me the smallest number which is bigger than the given number. Okay, because there are so many numbers, we have so many upper boundaries, we have 25, we have 26, we have 27, but we need to find the smallest number, smallest upper boundary, which is bigger than 23.1. Okay, so that is what ceiling does. Next is the floor function. Just as we have this ceil, also let me cover one more thing for you. Similar to ceil, there is one more ceiling function. Both the functions are equal. If you use CEIL, that is also going to yield same output as ceiling. So you can use whichever you are comfortable with. Now, similar to ceiling, we have floor function. What does this floor function do? It is exactly the opposite of ceiling function. This floor function will return the largest integer value that is smaller than or equal to a number. Okay. Demonstration. Select floor. I'm giving a value, let's say 23.7. Okay. Now the floor value here will be 23. Okay. Now understand it with our example. It was 23. Then we had 23.7. Then we had 24, which is the upper boundary. So between 23 and 24, we have 9 different values, starting from 23.1 till 23.9. Okay. Now what the definition was, return the largest integer which is smaller than the given integer. Okay, why do we say largest integer? Because we have so many values before this. We have 20, we have 21. So what do we want here is, we want the largest lower boundary, which is less than or equal to my given number. So that will become my boundary, and floor value will return that number. Okay, now even if I pass 0.1 here, it is going to yield the same output. Even if I pass 23.9, it will give me 23. Now don't get confused between ceiling, floor and round function. Okay, there is a big difference between round and ceiling and floor. If you could see that even if my value is 23.9, when I use floor function, it gave me 23. That is the lower boundary. But in case of round, what it happens, it rounds a number to a specified number of decimal places. Okay, it could be with decimal place or it could be without decimal place. Now same example, let me just pass round value to it. It will round it off to 24. Okay, why so? Because anything greater than 0.5 will be rounded off to 24, and anything less than 0.5 will be rounded off to 23. Okay, so round understands the limitation. If my value is greater than or equal to 0.5, it will round it up to the upper value. If my value is less than or equal to 0.5, less than 0.5, not equal to, I'm sorry, less than 0.5, that it will return me the floor value. Okay, so that's how round function works. Let me write down that condition for you. If value is greater than equal to 0.5, then return the ceiling value, else return the floor value. Okay, this is the pseudo algorithm that is designed behind round function. So I guess now you might be clear with what does a ceiling function does, what does a floor function do, and what does the round function do. So that was a small introduction for numeric function. In our next lecture, we'll continue with many such numeric functions where you will deal with finding some trigonometric values. You will deal with finding some aggregation functions, or maybe you will deal with finding some greatest number or the least number in your database. So all that we will cover in our next lecture. So as per our ritual, select, let me write the thank you message. Thank you from UPlats.